These two problems are similar to the activity we're going to ask you to do. They are asking you to plot the 4 points that you're given, and they're asking you to show that it's a parallelogram. So, or if it's not a parallelogram. So I'm going to plot these points, and then once they're plotted, I'm going to decide on the best one of the 5 methods that we have to choose from for showing that we have a parallelogram. So for this first one, plotting A at -2, -3, so back 2 and down 3. And that's where A is at. B is at 0, 5. C is at 6, 5. And D is at 4, -3. Now I have choices of the methods that we talked about in the other video. I can find all the slopes if I want to and compare the opposite sides. If they have the same slope, they're parallel. I can use the distance formula and calculate the distance and make sure that 2 sets of opposite sides are congruent. I can make sure that 1 set of opposite sides is congruent and parallel. Or I can test my diagonals to see if they bisect each other by using the midpoint formula. Those are my options that I have. And I always decide to graph first before I make my decision on the method to use. Looking at this picture, I want you to notice that BC goes straight across, and so does AD. This means that the slope is 0 for each of these. Now I want to show work, so I'm labeling my slope on each of these pieces, and I'm going to mark them parallel because they have the same slope of 0, because they're going straight across. If it's going straight up and down, remember that that's undefined for the slope. Now another thing that's really great if they're going straight across like this is that you can count the length. So count the spaces in between the lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6 across. Counting down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across again. So each of them is 6 across, and they each have a slope of 0. So this is a parallelogram because, so I'm going to say ABCD, naming it, is a parallelogram because it has 1 set of opposite sides congruent and parallel. So 1 set, opposite sides congruent and parallel. So that's one of the methods. Again, you could have found all the slopes, you could find all the distances, and compare both sets of opposite sides. That's one option. Now going over to the next one, A is at -3, -4. So plotting, and there's A. B is at -1, 2. C is at 7, 0. And D is at 5, -6. Now none of these sides, I can already tell, none of the sides are straight across, and none of them are straight up and down. So it might be best, you're either going to have to find out stuff about all of the sides, or you can use the 5th method on our list of methods that we were talking about earlier, which is to test your diagonals and see if they bisect each other. So that's the method that I'm going to use. One of the diagonals is BD. So if I'm looking at BD and I'm going to find the midpoint of it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at points B and D, and I'm going to use the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula, remember, is you add your x's and divide by 2, and then there's a comma, and then you add your y's and divide by 2, and then that's the point. So this would be -4, or sorry, it would be -1 and 5 is +4 divided by 2 is 2. And then here, 2 minus 6 is -4 divided by 2 is -2. That is the midpoint of BD. Now I need to test the midpoint of AC. So now looking at A and C and using the midpoint formula for that. -3 and 7 divided by 2, and then -4 and 0 divided by 2. So -3 and 7 is +4 divided by 2 is 2. And then -4 and 0 is -4 divided by 2 is -2. Since they both have the same midpoint, we know that the diagonals do bisect each other, and therefore it is a parallelogram. So I'm going to say yes, ABCD is a parallelogram. Because the diagonals bisect each other. So these videos, this would be like your activity you're going to do times 2, because I did 2 of these. You each are just going to be doing the same type of video with just one problem very similar to these. So good luck on that activity. I know y'all will do a great job.